Hello, today we're going to talk about direct variation. And direct variation takes two variables and makes one a constant multiple of the other. So that if one variable changes, the other variable will change in direct proportion to that first one. So for instance, the circumference of a circle, which we know as c, varies directly as the diameter of the circle. And we know that the circumference formula is pi times the diameter. So pi, right there, is the constant of variation. Meaning, if I know what the diameter is, the circumference is always a multiple of the diameter. You take the diameter and multiply it by pi every time to get the circumference. In my other example, the distance an object travels varies directly with the time it has traveled. So the distance an object travels varies directly with the time. And so the time consistently multiplies by the rate. And so in this example, the rate, whatever number it is, how fast you're traveling in either miles per hour, feet per second, something like that, the rate is your constant of variation. And so the time multiplied by the rate gives you the distance, or rather distance is a constant multiple of time. So let's take a look at an example. In this example, we're renting a studio, and the cost to rent that studio varies directly as the time that we have the studio rented. So Lee is going to rent the studio for 5 hours, and he pays $625 to do that. So what I want to look at is, if Lee has the studio and pays $625, how much is the cost, which I'll call K, per hour for 5 hours? So K is the cost per hour. Now, to solve for K, we're going to simply divide by 5. And we find that K is equal to $125 per hour. And so that's my constant of variation. However many hours that we have the studio rented, we're going to multiply it by 125 to get how much it costs to rent the studio for that length of time. And we can actually come up with an equation here. If I want you to use R to represent the rental fee, and then I'll use T for time rented, well, we can set up that we know that the rental fee is however much the cost is per hour multiplied by the time. And we now know that the cost per hour is 125. So we have this formula, R equals 125T. So if we're renting for 7 hours, then we're going to do 125 times 7. And that's going to be $875. And I can use this equation right here if I want to change the amount of time I rent the studio. If I rent it for 10 hours, maybe I only rent it for 2 hours, and so on. Okay, and we are done.